Hi everyone, welcome to my video. In this guide, I will explain all confusing attributes and damage numbers you see in the game. I have started to make this kind of useful and simple guides, so if you could just like and subscribe, that will be great support to me, so I can make more videos about this. There are 5 main attributes. These attributes cannot be used by themselves, but they are converted into certain stats with respective ratio. Body increases your maximum HP on this ratio. Power increases your minimum physical attack and maximum physical attack on certain ratio. Defense also increases your maximum HP and physical defense. Agility increases your minimum physical attack and critical rate, which is useful for dual blades and ranged umbrella builds. Momentum increases your maximum HP and affinity rate, which is useful for Bellstrike and strategic sword builds. Maximum HP is basically hit points you can take. Maximum T-bar is always fixed at 100 and they cannot be increased in any main. If you deplete your maximum T-bar, you'll get an exhausted state. In this state, you'll take extra damage and enemy players can execute you to deal high amount of damage. Now we are in the tricky part. Usually in other games you have static value of attack points, but in this game you don't have that. The left smaller number is your minimum physical attack. The right bigger number is your maximum physical attack. When you deal damage, you will randomly pick a number between these attacks. It can be the lowest one and the highest one too. As you see, minimum physical attack is your actual attack value. But in certain builds like strategic sword, you can trigger affinity in special occasions, which makes you to deal higher damage with maximum physical attack. So you can increase it in that kind of builds, and if you deal crit damage or consistent damage, you better to go on minimum physical attack and critical rate. Next we have attribute attack. Attribute attack is simply pathway attacks. Every weapon style has its own class and they deal additional damage according to that class. Any attack you deal with your weapon triggers attribute attacks. Physical defense decreases damage taken part that comes from physical attack attribute. Now we are in the confusing part, and this part actually what makes your damage higher than usual. To make it to pick a random number between your attacks, you must hit with precision. Precision hits are white numbers when you deal damage. If you fail to hit a precision hit, you will trigger an abrasion. Abrasion always takes your minimum physical attack and cannot trigger any future damage reactions, except for affinity. Abrasion hits are grey numbers. As you see, my precision rate is 100%, which means I cannot trigger an abrasion hit. When you trigger a precision hit, you will have a chance to trigger either critical damage or affinity damage. When you trigger a critical hit, your damage number will be yellow, and since it picks a random number between your attacks, your critical hit always will be different numbers. According to multiplier, your critical hit will be always highest damage in the game. But since it is inconsistent, most of the time your affinity hits will be higher than critical hits. Keep in mind your critical rate is capped at 80%, which is considered as consistent damage, but you won't be able to reach it in this version. You can also have extra 15 critical rate that's given by arena attributes, but it only works in arena. Next we have affinity rate. Affinity rate is a different kind of damage. It's similar to critical rate, but works differently. Affinity hit will always take your maximum physical attack as its starter value and multiply it by 35%. When you deal damage, if you trigger an abrasion, you have a chance to trigger either an abrasion hit or affinity hit. If you trigger a precision hit, you have a chance to trigger either a critical hit or an affinity hit. Affinity hits are orange numbers when you hit the target. You can increase your affinity rate by arena talents and it only works in arena. On the bad side of this, your affinity rate is capped at 40%, which is considered as inconsistent damage. Most of the time you won't be able to hit affinity, but certain conditions can trigger affinity hits. Abrasion convert rate is basically useless. You can obtain it in arena, and since you always hit the precision hit, you don't have to worry about that. Direct critical rate increases your critical rate chance without any gap. Same for affinity rate too. Lastly, we have critical healing bonus. When you heal a target, you actually deal damage, but the damage is positive, which means you can increase it with critical chance rates. The rest of these attributes are small buffers, and many of them cannot be obtained in this version, so just forget about them. I also want to talk about special damage numbers that can be only seen in Dual Blaze. When you unleash Blaze of Heaven burst form in Dual Blaze, hitting targets will trigger additional phantom attacks. These attacks kills with Bamboocut attack and Affinity rate. So, that's it. Thank you for watching, and if you want to see more guides I make, you can click on the videos in the screen.